Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Oklahoma's wheat harvest is pretty much in the books. For a harvest debrief and to look at some of the research, we're joined by David Marburger, our Extension Small Grain Specialist. David, why don't you just kind of start with how it all went and kind of where we are now as things are winding down?
Yeah, well, you know, kind of as we were progressing here through the spring and with it being so cool, we thought maybe we'd have a little bit later harvest, but we went from the second coldest April on record to the warmest May on record. So even though we were behind developmentally, we really made up a lot of ground there, and actually harvest got started maybe on a more of a normal time, if not maybe just a little bit ahead of schedule. And with just the lower overall amount of acres to harvest this year due to abandonment, etc., harvest has gone pretty quickly. Overall, we had very early on, we had very good conditions to get the crop off. So just with that and with the lower amount of acres, we've really progressed harvest here quickly. And then now here towards the end of June, we've been starting to get some rains in some pockets that still need to get that weed out. But overall, we are on the downhill slide here towards the finish line with the 2018 wheat harvest.
Of the wheat that has come into the elevator, what's been kind of the overall picture in terms of quality, yields, just in general in Oklahoma for producers? What are you hearing?
So a lot of the yields kind of as expected, below average. A lot of reports in that 15 to 30 bushel range. Some coming in higher though. Those producers who were fortunate enough to catch a rain or maybe some time, other timely rains there in the spring, coming in with a little bit higher yield. A lot of elevators, you hear reports taking in a lot less grain than they normally do, as expected, even some as low as maybe 10 to 15% of what they normally do. So that kind of sums up kind of the yield there. The test weights overall have been pretty good throughout harvest. A lot of test weights coming in that 60 pound range plus. With some of the rains here recently, we might start to see a little bit of hit on that with some of that final wheat that needs to be coming out.
And as we've heard from Dr. Anderson the last couple of weeks, prices kind of started to rise at the right time as well. Let's talk about some of your research now. You've got variety trials, different points across the state. Where are you in terms of harvest and what some of that data kind of look like?
Well, fortunately, we've had a pretty good harvest in the program as well. No, everything's kind of going smoothly so far, no breakdowns. So we've been able to get a lot of these trials off. Overall, pretty as timely as we can try to get to them. And a lot of that data is available now on our homepage, the wheat.okstate.edu website. As it kind of stands right now, varieties like a Bentley have been doing very well. A Joe out of Kansas, WB 4269. As you move further north, varieties like SY Monument out towards northwest into the Panhandle, those that are adapted more for that area, like a Langan out of Colorado, the LCS Mint, those are the varieties that have been doing pretty well. So it's been pretty tough conditions overall. Those varieties that were able to make it through the drought, make it through those freezes, still be able to put on heads at the end of the day, and then still be able to finish given those pretty tough grain fill conditions that we went through in May. Those are the varieties that are really shining, at least in our variety trials.
Well, these years, obviously are pretty crummy for growers, but they really give some insight for researchers, don't they?
Mm-hmm. We can always learn something even in a bad year.
Okay. In a nutshell, how would you sum up harvest in a couple of words this year?
How would I sum up harvest?
Yeah.
Overall, pretty smooth. Okay. Not quite what we were hoping in terms of yield, but the harvest itself, pretty smooth. You want to sum up the year in general, I'd probably describe it as tough.
For a closer look at variety trial results from this year, go to sunup.okstate.edu. Now to another nearby research field and a rare glimpse of harvest by the Wheat Improvement Team, and very likely, OSU's Varieties of the Future.
Today, at this moment, we are harvesting what's called head rows. It's about the halfway point of the breeding program. This is where we're starting to first really get the separate lines of wheat of where it's segregating. So we're having to harvest single rows to keep it pure and try to really segregate everything.
This is kind of like a retailer going to market. The only difference is we created our own market. So this is the germplasm we created from our breeding program, and there's 61,000 of them. And now we're going through it and shopping. This is my kind of shopping, actually. I can do this kind of shopping. I love to do it, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of patience because there's a lot of material to sift through. And once we sift through that, we know what we're going to come back to the market with.
The seed will be increased and that'll be mowed to simulate cattle grazing. And then after that, it's just going to keep going into bulk increases. And Dr. Carver's going to look at it and decide which one goes on each year until we get down to probably only like 4 or 5 varieties or lines, for instance. And then eventually, if he likes those will be released for the farmers to grow in Oklahoma.
Just to get here, it took 5 years. We had to make the crosses, we had to produce the hybrids, and then let the hybrids go through several years of inbreeding to produce inbred lines that now appear in this field. This is the first time we have a true inbred line that we can look at, evaluate, and decide which ones of those inbred lines we really want to test and put a lot of energy into out in the field across the state.
The overall goal always is just better yields for the farmers, and we're also now working on better end-use quality for bakers and millers, but some of the major things we focus on is getting a better disease resistance and a better insect resistance. Those are the major things. Also always just good sized heads, good quality uses, good protein, just overall good for baking and milling as well. So it's not only good for the farmers, but good for the end use.
We had a misery this year. It was called lack of water. And this crop also suffered from lack of water. And now we have that imprinted on this crop, on this set of germplasm that we can now select for better drought tolerance. So what was really a misery out in the state turned out to be an excellent opportunity for us to select varieties better adapted to these conditions.
This time of summer is often the time that fall calving operations will be weaning the calves, and it's the time when we begin the growing program for those heifers that are being weaned at this time to get them ready for the upcoming breeding season that'll occur in late November and December. We, of course, have target weights that we're trying to get those replacement heifers to reach by the time the breeding season rolls around. Between weaning and the start of the breeding season, those heifers usually need to average about 1.5 pounds per day growing as we go through the late part of summer and into fall. Now, the grass that's available for those heifers right now has enough protein and energy in it to reach that kind of rate of gain. But as we continue through summer and we get more hot, dry days, and certainly as the warm season grasses, Bermuda grass and native grasses mature, then that protein content begins to fall off and we lose the kind of quality that we need to reach those average daily gains that are desired for those replacement heifers. Therefore, I would suggest that we consider for the last half of summer and into fall a protein supplement program for growing replacement heifers. And it's very, very similar to what we've talked about before for stocker cattle, the Oklahoma Gold program, which means that these heifers would receive 1 to 2 pounds of a high protein supplement on a daily basis. This high protein going into their rumen helps the microbial growth in the rumen so that those cattle can do a better job of digesting that average to lower quality forage that they have available in the last half of summer. As we're putting together that kind of growing ration for these heifers, that high protein ration, then I would consider including one of the ionophores. These are feed ingredients that basically are sold as either monensin or lasalicid. Either one of them will do a great job of helping those heifers as they go through that growing period. Those ionophores, those feed ingredients, are helpful from several standpoints. They will help the feed efficiency. In other words, getting a little more growth for the amount of feed that's available. Both of them are good at resisting coccidiosis. that disease that's especially a problem for young cattle. And finally, research out of Texas A&M a number of years ago, clear back in the 70s, has shown us that heifers that were receiving an ionophore in their growing program reached puberty on the average about 2 weeks earlier than did heifers that were fed similarly but did not receive the ionophore. And what that means is that we should have a little higher percentage of them cycling at the start of that breeding season in November. So if you're one of those that, as you're growing those replacement heifers, those fall-born replacement heifers this summer and fall, and you want the highest percentage possible cycling at the start of the breeding season, then I really suggest you visit with your feed dealer and put together a high-protein supplement for those heifers, include one of the ionophores. I think you'll be very, very happy with the outcome in terms of the rate of gain, those heifers reaching their target weight to the start of the breeding season, and a high percentage of them cycling that you can get bred in that breeding season next fall. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Wheat harvest is pretty much wrapped up through the state. So Kim, how is yield and quality doing?
I think they're above expectations. You look at the yields or bushels per acre. I think they're slightly higher in Oklahoma and a little better in Kansas than we expected. Protein is, it's going to average well above 12%. That's good news, and test weight's going to be up probably around 59 pounds. That's what the market's looking for.
Is there any good news for wheat prices?
Oh, a little good news. I think the prices are building a floor now. You know, we got those cash prices up around $5.50, $5.60. They've dropped off about $1. The basis, or that protein premium, is holding. You get the southern Oklahoma, it's around even for the basis, northern Oklahoma 25. And if you look at the 19 crop, that basis is running somewhere around minus 50 cents. So in northern Oklahoma, 75 cents lower than it is now, and in southern Oklahoma about 50 cents lower than it is now. But that's mostly due to the July contract is higher than the July 18 contract. So that premium, our spread in the futures, accounts for most of that basis difference.
Moving to the global market, Russia is now the largest exporter of wheat. Is there any news coming from that country?
Yes, Russia just sold cargo of wheat into Brazil. Remember last year they sold wheat to Venezuela, and I asked a trader what it would cost to deliver Russian wheat into Mexico, and he said about $7.13. Of course, the United States, we could deliver it to the Mexican border on rail car for about $5.13. If you look at the Russian crop, it's probably about 400 million bushels less than last year, slightly lower planted acres. They've got some weather problems with their crop, so it's coming in. Remember, last year was 3.1 billion, a record, and so it's looking 2.6, 2.7 this year.
Let's move on to corn and soybeans. How are prices doing, and what type of impact could a potential trade war have on those prices?
Well, if you look at corn and beans, the 18 crops look really well. I think they got a pretty good handle on the acres of production for that. You look at corn prices, they're down 50 cents from the high. You look at soybean prices, they're down $1.60 from the top. I believe corn prices are building the floor. Who knows about soybean prices? And I think a good portion of that price decline is due to the risk associated with the potential trade war. So it's having an impact mostly on beans, then on corn, and then a little bit on wheat.
All right, thanks, Kim. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist at Oklahoma State University.
Dr. Justin Talley does an excellent job of informing all of us about horn flies, about the importance of controlling them, about the fact that they cost the cattle industry literally millions of dollars every year in loss in production and in control cost. Now, one other area that may not be as familiar to all of us is the importance of controlling horn flies in dairy heifers, because there has been an association with lack of control and an increased incidence of mastitis in dairy heifers. Now, the university discovered that horn flies were causing lesions in the teats of these dairy heifers, which resulted in mastitis when these heifers freshened. A field trial was done in Louisiana that compared dairies that had hornfly control with those that didn't. And what was found in this study is that dairy heifers that did not have control of hornflies had a 10-fold increase in Staphylococcus aureus mastitis when they freshen. In dairy heifers, hornflies are associated with teat lesions that cause mastitis. As we all know, mastitis will decrease milk yields and also increase our somatic cell counts. So it's very important that we take care of those dairy heifers as it relates to hornflies. If you'd like some more information about the association between hornflies and mastitis in dairy heifers, if you will go to SUNUP at okstate.edu.
To southern Oklahoma now, where SUNUP videographer Ed Barron takes us on the recent ranch tour.
Today we're having our our second annual, I'll call it, animal science / Master Cattleman Tour. And so we've kind of started in the western part of the state, and in the southeast has turned this year. And so we've got 7 ranches. There'll be 4 today they'll tour and 3 tomorrow. We'll get to see some stocker operations. Today you're going to see a lot more of the cow-calf industry, but there's also kind of different perspectives on how they manage, say, like cool season forages and prescribed fire. We'll even see a ranch today that is utilizing the windmill technology on their ranch. So you're going to see a lot of different things, a lot of different terrain that you can't believe within maybe 2 counties that you would see this kind of difference. It's good for producers to get out and see, but it's also good for us to get out there and kind of bring the university to you kind of thing, but also see the producers that are kind of using some of the technology that we're talking about when we have a Master Cattleman course, and they get to see it firsthand instead of seeing it on some kind of PowerPoint. Simple things like how people do fencing or how they work their cattle. They can kind of take it home and maybe make some changes on their own operation based on what they see.
Hi, I'm Wes Lee with your weekly Mesonet weather report. Last week, storms did more than give us some much-needed rains and heavy straight-line winds that damaged trees across the state. They also left behind some very high humidity levels. These relative humidities do more than give my wife a bad hair day. They make the felt temperature much higher on the heat index scale. The maximum heat index for most of the week has been near or over 100. On June 26th, it reached a high of 110 at Nowata. Cattle are feeling the effects of high humidity as well. During the afternoon of June 27, no areas of the state had a cattle comfort index of less than 100. A cattle comfort index of 85 to 105 puts animals in the heat caution category. 105 or higher moves them into the heat danger range. Plants are not exempt from humidity issues either. For example, peanut leaf spot infection hours accumulate whenever relative humidity is above 90% within certain temperatures. A fungicide is recommended when there are 36 or more infection hours since the last application. Here we see a majority of the state above this threshold level. Now here's Gary with some data showing improvement in the state's drought monitor.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Let's go right to the newest drought monitor map and see what sort of changes all that rain has brought. Still a very similar map, however, one indicator that we see is very little of that highest level of drought, the exceptional drought left in the state. Only the far corner of northwestern Cimarron County do we see the exceptional drought. However, we still see a lot of that red out across western Oklahoma and down into the southwest Again, that's a long-term indicator, regardless of what short-term rainfall we've had this month. But we have seen quite a reduction in those bad colors across the western half of the state. Now take a look down in far southeastern Oklahoma. That's another area of the state where those colors are starting to intensify a little bit. We now have severe drought covering much of the far southeastern corner. Again, that's an area we're simply going to have to keep an eye on as we go forward through the summer. Pretty good way to see who's gotten what is from the Oklahoma Mesonet's June rainfall thus far. Now this is through the 26th. The darker colors are of course the heavier rainfall amounts. Northwest Oklahoma, lots of good totals from 4 all the way up to more than 7 inches. Now let's take a look at that as percent of normal rainfall, what we'd expect through that same time period. Well, those reds and oranges jump out at us pretty quickly. Again, those same areas show lots of trouble, from 40% of normal all the way down to less than 10% of normal as we get down into south central Oklahoma and of course up in northeast Oklahoma. Too many reds and oranges. We need lots more of those blues and greens to help knock this drought out. So we'll see what happens from here on out. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
How much room do mushrooms need to grow? As much room as possible. In fact, mushrooms are a trend this year for 2018 and 2019. China is the #1 producer of mushrooms. The United States comes in second. Mushrooms are a trend for 2018 because they're so versatile. You're going to see them in drinks, soups, smoothies, tea, and they can also be pickled, brined, and braised. Mushrooms take on the flavor of about anything that you put them with. We'll see them in a lot of blended burgers and different meats as well. They're also high in vitamin B and D, low fat, low carb, high in fiber, and good for your mental health. The button mushroom is one of the most popular mushrooms and it consists of 90% of all mushrooms consumed in the United States. In fact, right here in Oklahoma, JM Farms produces 500,000 pounds of mushrooms per week. That's a lot of mushrooms. They are picked by hand and they have over 500 employees. They are also shipped to Arkansas, Texas, New Mexico, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. There are 30 species of mushrooms that actually even glow in the dark. The world's largest organism is also a fungi. In eastern Oregon, located in the Blue Mountains, there is a fungus that is considered to be the world's largest known organism and is believed to be over 2,400 years old and is 4 square miles large. So this year, try adding some mushrooms to any meal you have. For more information about the food industry, go to fapc.biz and download our app, or go to sunup.okstate.edu.
We end the show this week before Independence Day, spending a little time with the Grant County 4-H'ers who retired the American flag on Flag Day. SUNUP's Dave Deacon takes us to Pond Creek.
I'll tell you, when you serve in one of the military outfits, well, you just learn to gain that respect for the flag.
Not only a symbol for our country, but it also symbolizes so many other things, and every piece of that flag means something.
Symbol of the sacrifices that have been made.
When I was liberated from prison camp, we was on the road to marching, and the guard said, "You won't have to walk no more after today." It was good to see that old flag again.
We need to treat it with respect because it's kind of like treating those people with respect.
It teaches a new generation about the respect for the flag and the right way to treat it.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're doing a flag retirement because there were 188 flags, I believe, in the county, and we needed to dispose of them, but we didn't want to just hand them over to someone else, and we figured it would be a good thing to do for the community.
When it comes the time when I'm old and faded, do not let me fly in disrepair. Rather retire me from my duties, only to replace me with a new flag, so that I may continue to symbolize our country.
The flag retirement ceremonies are very important in that it just really gives people a respect and knowledge of what that symbol is and how we should respect it all the way till the end.
We leave the blue field intact because no one should ever let the Union be broken. A flag should never be torn up like an old bed sheet. It should be cut with scissors in a methodical manner.
We decided to do it as kind of a public service where anyone can put one in.
You get emotional sometimes.
And we are here to sound live taps for any time anybody needs taps. Mostly funerals, but also for Memorial Days, Veterans Days, flag retirements.
Why do you fly the American flag?
Well, it's the greatest nation on earth. That's the reason.
Always great to see young people serving their communities. And that'll do it for us this week. We certainly wish you and your friends and families a very safe and happy 4th of July. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.